I have an upcoming project where I need a router plane. I'm going to see if I can build it out of this random junk. Unlike most people on YouTube, I don't have a chunk of cherry, so I'm going to use this piece of 2x6. Piece of pallet wood that I cut up, and this old chisel. Let's see if we can build this thing. Surprisingly, the grain on this 2x6 is pretty good. It's almost like quarter sawn. Once I cut it in half, it should be okay. I'm going to use this file folder to make a template for my mortise, or you could use cardstock, whatever. And I'm just marking this at 1.5 inches to represent the top of the router plane. So I'll draw a line here, and that will be the top of my 2x6 that I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using this digital angle finder to set the angle for my chisel. Could just use a protractor if you have one of those, but I have the digital one, so that's what I'm going to use. And I'm just going to set this at 60 degrees, and I picked 60 degrees because that's what everybody else seems to use. So I'm going to take my chisel and lay it down on that line I just drew so I can get an idea of how much room I need at the bottom. And I'm just going to mark a little bit of space there so I can get the chisel down far enough. And this will represent the front part of the mortise at the bottom. And at the top, I'm just going to mark it at 1 inch and then connect those two lines. This angle needs to be slightly different than the angle for the chisel because if they were both parallel, then your wedge isn't going to grab. So that's going to be for my full mortise. Then next, what I'm going to do is put the chisel back down so I can make a line to represent about where the chisel is going to sit in the mortise. And I'll just connect these two dots, and then the remaining area is going to be the shape of my wedge. So this area right in here is going to represent the shape of my wedge. And now I'm just going to take my template and carefully cut it out with a utility knife. And since I'm working with this piece of scrap I had laying around, it's got this ragged edge at the end of it. I'm just going to mark this so I can cut it to length. I'm not sure about the length yet, but I'll leave it long for now. And I don't know if I should use my miter saw to do this or maybe just a hand saw. And I'm going to mark this for center now so I know where the chisel's going to be. I always like to measure from both sides when I'm trying to find the center of something. And if I need to, I can always cut the ends off later. Then I'll just mark on either side of the center point so I know where I need to mortise it out for the chisel to go in. And instead of trying to pound all this out with the chisel, I'm first going to drill some holes. So I'm going to drill from the top, and I'll try and keep my drill bit in line with those two marks that I made on the side. So I'll just drill through, being careful not to blow out the bottom of it. And I'll just make two holes, one for the front and one for the back of the mortise. And I think it came out pretty good. I'm good on top, and bottom's close enough. And in another maneuver to cut down on the amount of chisel work, I'm going to use my coping saw to connect these two holes. Should make it a little bit easier. I'll just feed it through and then reconnect it and saw out as much as I can. Doesn't seem like much, but this little piece will make chiseling a lot easier. Now I'll just take my piece and my chisels and of course my Paul Sellers mallet. Start whacking away. I think it came out pretty good. The chisel fits in there nice. And it's a little bit sloppy side to side, but that's okay because if my chisel's not perfectly square at the end, this will give me some lateral adjustment if I need to tweak it. And it goes through far enough that I can do pretty deep dados or whatever it is I'm working on. And I'm just going to take that piece of pallet wood and clean up one edge of it. And this will be one side of my wedge. This will give it something nice and smooth to slide in and out of the mortise. And I'm going to use my template one more time to set up the angle for my wedge. I'll just take this little piece and set it on the edge here and use that to line up my ruler so I can draw the other line. And this will represent what my wedge should be, but I'm going to make it a little bit bigger just in case it fits loose. I can always trim it down later if I need to. So I'm just going to draw a second line a little further over, and I don't remember what it is, but it's about that much more. And I don't have a bandsaw, so the easiest way for me to rip this crazy angle is to put it on my table saw sled. I'm just lining it up with the kerf in the sled, and then I'll take this micro jig clamp, since I put dovetail grooves in my sled, and I can slide it in there and clamp it down right to the sled. This setup makes it really easy to cut strange angles like this, and it's pretty safe. And here's my wedge that I messed up when I was cutting out the template with the utility knife, but that's okay. I'll just take the cut off piece and clamp this into my vise and use the hand plane to smooth out the two sides. If you don't have a hand plane, you might want to consider getting one. It's much easier and much quicker to use one of these to trim something like this down instead of getting out the sander and dealing with all the mess and the noise. A wedge fits in there pretty good. It's nice and snug. The only problem is it doesn't fit up against my chisel. I could cut the handle off, but I don't think I want to do that right now. It's like I said, I don't even know if this is going to work, so I'm just going to cut out the back of the wedge here to match the shape of the chisel. And now I'm ready to try it out. Just stick the chisel in there and let's see if the wedge snugs up against it. Just get everything in place and give it a couple of taps. And it's in there nice and secure. Doesn't wiggle around at all. And I could push it side to side if I need to, and just give it a whack on the top, and that'll loosen everything up so you can take it apart. The only problem I have now is it's too wide. I can't really hold on to it. So I'm gonna take the finished piece and trim it down to size. Now I just need to take it and clean it up a little bit with the plane so it'll be nice and smooth on the top and the bottom. I'm all ready to test it out. It's cleaned up, and I put a sample dado in here and just set it on top of it. Drop the chisel in with the wedge and get the chisel so it's resting on the bottom of the dado, and then snug your wedge up. Just get it in there as best you can and then give it a little tap. You can always adjust it later. And see if this thing works. I'm actually surprised this thing's working well. I didn't have to really mess with it too much at all. Just run it along the top of the piece of wood and the chisel cleans up the bottom of it. And it's doing pretty decent cuts here. I may have to sharpen the chisel a little bit more and mess around with the height adjustment, but does what it's supposed to do. So it came out pretty good, I think. Um, Probably gonna take the wedge here and clean it up, make it look a little bit better than that. And I might take the front and notch it out here so I can see a little bit better the end of the chisel. But other than that, I think I'm good to go. Thanks for watching.